We're ready to go.
Okay. Good morning and welcome back. Today we're working on what I'm calling Henry's mowers. These are the two mowers that I got in a deal where he had a whole bunch and I got one running for him, and he said I could have all the rest of them if I wanted them, but I only took two because I felt like I was getting greedy if I took more than that. And today we're going to put new wheels on and clean up the carbs and see if we can't get these two running. So let's get to it. Okay, lucky for us, he already drained all the gas out of both of them. So that saves us the effort of having to do that. So we're going to go ahead and pull the carburetors and give them a good cleaning and see if that's enough to save them. Okay, let's get to this. Let's get this carb off of here. Now that was pretty interesting. Before I took the second bolt out, the gasket fell off. That means this gasket was just pinched up in there someplace. That's not good. That kind of means that somebody's been touching this before already. So let's see what we've got. Let's put you over there. And that gasket would have gone right here. So somebody took this, oh, look at that. The springs are off and everything. Even though I know it doesn't have any gas, we'll go ahead and shut the fuel off anyway. Let's get this carburetor the rest of the way off. Well, we saved the gaskets. That's worth something. Okay, buddy, come on. Nice and gentle. We want nice and gentle today. Okay, now if we can get this gas line to let go. Come on, buddy. Okay, good. Now I'm going to take this over to the bench and run it through the cleaner and see if we can't get this thing running. So we'll be back in 1 second. This one, a lot of things have to happen before you put the bolts in. So we'll get everything stacked up in order. And the first thing we'll do is attach our linkage. Our bolts go through our air cleaner. So normally I would play with the springs and things afterwards. But on this one, we're going to do them ahead of time. We're going to get all that prepped before we put the bolts in. Okay, I couldn't give you a guess how long that spring's been out of there. There's dirt filling up the little hole that it goes in. So I'm going to wander over here real quick and grab a tool. And let's clean that out real quick. Okay, now we can see daylight. Okay, now we're hooked. We'll leave that right there and get the carburetor involved. Now, when you encounter one like this, you might have the misfortune of doing it twice, because the spring wasn't attached to anything when we started. So we're guessing at which hole it goes into. But I honestly don't really think in this case that it would matter that much. Now we're going to go ahead and get our fuel line on. And we're doing all this before we put the carburetor on the motor, only because the air cleaner, the air box will be in the way when we put the whole thing back together. Okay, that looks good. Our springs and linkage appear correct. So let's get all our gaskets in order. and throw our airbox back on. I always tell everybody that I prefer to work on two-stroke motors a whole lot more than four-stroke motors. On days like today, I don't think that's necessarily true. We're on our second of two, and everything's going swimmingly well. So as you can see here, putting the springs on second would have been much more difficult than doing them ahead of time. Looks like we missed something here. So let's ease everything back apart. More than likely what happens, our gasket moved a little bit. And I wanted to keep you on the motor, but you jumped on me, so there you go. And there you have it. And that should do it. Okay, now a little bit of gas and we should have two running mowers. Let's find out. I'll go ahead and turn the fuel on. Hope that it doesn't pour fuel everywhere. Once we're done with this, we're going to go through the drive systems and make sure that they all work correctly. Job one, though, is getting the motor running. If the motor doesn't run, I don't care if the drive system works. Well, I heard a little bit. String's hanging up just a touch, but that's to be expected after sitting for a little while. When we cranked this up, I heard a funny popping noise, and the first thing that came to my head was valves. I don't know if you heard it when we pulled the cord, but it had just the smallest little noise in the background, and usually that can be caused by a valve that's not opening or not closing. So let's get inside the valves and take a look. I'm kind of betting when we open this up that we find a valve spring. This is laying there in the bottom of the cover. But you just don't know until you get inside it. This was a free lawnmower after all, so I can't complain. Perhaps she's trying to run on me. Okay, let's grab a magnet for the bolts and take a look inside her. It looks like this cover's coming off for the first time today. She's on there pretty snug. That usually means it's still got the factory gasket sealant in it. Okay, double check for screws. Nope, no extra screws laying around. No extra screws in the block. I'm trying to do this very carefully so I don't bend the valve cover, because I don't want to spend 15 bucks on a valve cover if I can get out of it. There she goes. With just a little bit of work. And if you look at this, that's our popping right there. Looks like we've got a valve that stayed open, or stayed closed. Yeah, it stayed open. Now, a stuck valve is not the end of the world by any means at all. That's just where we're starting today. You can see everything else appears to be working correctly. So once we get this valve straightened up, we should have a good to go mower. Let's weed her and see if we can get her to just come loose. Like that. It's entirely possible that this motor has just been sitting forever and ever and ever. Yep. Once we shook her loose, it looks like she's cooperating. So now what we'll do is we'll clean this up and put a new seal around it and start her up and see what happens. Okay, we're going to use my two favorite tools. The tools of destruction are always way more fun. I'm going to clean this up real quick. Prep it for a new gasket. Even if you're doing the gasket in a tube, it's still nice to give yourself a good surface to work with. The 2 minutes you spend doing this might save you a couple hours later, taking it all back apart again. Okay, it looks like that valve just stuck from sitting and sitting and sitting. And I have seen that before on these Honda motors, where if you park it for 6 months or a year, then occasionally you'll have a valve hang up on you. And the last one of these I did one of these a couple of years back, and I know the gentleman personally that has it, and 2 years later, he says it still hasn't stuck again. So I go with the assumption that it just got stuck from sitting. Let's pull the plug and rotate her a few times, see what she looks like. Yep, that looks pretty good. So let's put her back together and clean her up and see what we've got. Okay, that took a few minutes. Had to chase all over creation for spark plugs for another mower. And I sort of got distracted. Let's get our extra oil off and let's throw this gasket back on and the cover and see what we've got. I'm expecting good things here, good things. Excuse me. Now we're going to put these on just a little bit each. And once we've got all 4 of them in place, we'll tighten them up a little bit. that's the last one, so we'll get a little snug, little snug, little snug, little snug. And that bent a little bit when we were taking it off. You can see it found its way home. Okay, that should do it. Now, since we did leak a little bit of oil, we'll check our oil level and see if she'll start. Okay, now I've got faith here. I believe this is going to run. We've checked the oil, haven't put the air filter back on, but that valve would explain everything that was going on. Well, that's the end of part one of the free mowers. This one had a sticky valve, and that was it. You can tell from the wear on the wheels that this mower's got bad posture. So when we get the wheels off, we'll give the axles a little bit of a twist to try to straighten that out a little bit. There we go. There's one. Now this won't necessarily bend this, but what it'll do is it'll bend the plate that it's on. But you give it a more respectable stance. There we go. I'll throw the wheel back on, and we'll move around to the other side and repeat the process. Okay, let's scoot over. Whoa. There we go. And looking at this, I can see just the tiniest little warp in this. See, we're bending the actual deck itself when we do this. And it's just, a design issue where they could have sturdied it up just a little bit more. Super common for that to happen over time where the front tires get bow-legged and, well, sometimes the rear tires. But for whatever reason, it's usually the front. Okay, let's see what she looks like on the ground. Now, if you look at it, she's got a much more proper look. And now we'll start it one last time while it's still ours, because I've got a couple of people waiting for this. I've got to figure out who's going to get it and who's not. Okay, we got this guy finished, and we were pretty lucky. We could hear from the noise when we tried to start her what was wrong. You heard that little popping noise when we pulled the cord, and it didn't quite want to try to start. It didn't really give us a good kick, but it told us that something was going on with the valves. And when we got into it, sure enough, there was a stuck valve. And once we got the valve freed up and cleaned it up a little bit, it works like a charm. Starts on the first pull. So she's done.